Hello and welcome to another DIY install guide. Today we're going to be working with a 2015 WRX and installing our new Circuit Demon Heart Halos. So this is a really cool design. Obviously it's pretty unique. This same method could be used for other makes and models, but we wanted to show it on the 2015 WRX because A, it's a very popular headlight for us to work on, and B, these fit really nicely in there. So we want to show you guys what we're going to be using to install these, how we do it, and finally putting this in there and lighting it up. So the cool thing about our RGB heart halos are, number one, you can use them with any RGB remote. For ours, we chose the Circuit Demon 2-channel. Change it any color you want, which is nice and fun to do. Secondly, these also work as a turn signal. So if you want to wire this into your factory turn signal, these will also turn a bright orange color for that. These just have a single patch of wires coming out of the back, so we are going to need to route a hole for that in the headlight. And then we didn't add any sort of mounting tabs on this. This way, when you're looking at it, even if it's off, you just see that nice defined white heart shape. So we're gonna show you guys how to mount these to the headlight without using glue or in mounting tabs, a nice secure fashion, to make sure these don't bounce around after a couple of vibrations on your slammed coils. So the first thing you're going to need for sure is our new heart halos. These are only available in 86 mil, so that's what we're using. This is the smallest size we could get without the peak of the heart touching the projector lens for a lot of applications. So next is obviously a pair of headlights. So for these, we are going to be using the 2015 WRX headlights. These are the Depot brand, but the same method could be used for the OEM ones as well as other cars applications. Next thing we're going to need is just a fine or extra fine, ultra fine point Sharpie. We are going to need a pair of pliers, a small drill. So this is a 1/32 drill bit. It's very small. If you don't have something this small, I would use a 1/16. Is probably the largest hole that I would go for this. And then we're also going to need a little bit of clear fishing line. You can get this at any store, really, Walmart, Kmart, something mart. I also like to use a little bit of this wire coating or insulation. And I'll show you that's for. It's a little trick to make sure that the knots that tie down the halos are super tight. And lastly, we are going to be using a Dremel in order to cut the wire hole for these halos. If you don't have access to a Dremel, you can use just a normal drill as well. What I would recommend with that is stepping the bits up. So start with a small bit, go to the next size up, until you get the correct size. If you go in with a large bit, it could grab the plastic and crack it. So we're gonna go through step by step exactly what we do here at the shop. This is actually a customer set of headlights that we're working on. So we are gonna be repainting these. So you'll see I am gonna mark on here with a Sharpie. If you don't plan on repainting your headlights or they're already painted, I'll show you how to make sure that you don't mess the paint up. So the first thing we're gonna have to do is I always remove the sea light area if we're gonna paint them. Once again, if you're not gonna paint them, don't worry about it, but these just have a few clips. So I'm just gonna push these from the back forward. And then we just pop that out. Same with the bottom. And then these ones here, you can either push in a little bit to have them pop forward, or you can kind of just grab it from the front and pull. All right. Next up, we are going to be painting this amber marker a different color. So I'm going to pop this out. If you just push on this single tab here, that comes right out. And there we are, bare bones, ready to go. As far as the orientation goes for the halo itself, we're just gonna go with a traditional kind of up to down shape there. If you wanted to tilt these either way, you can do that just to give yourself a more unique look. But once again, we are just going with the traditional up to down shape. So for these, what we always like to do is have them centered right in the middle of the projector opening. So you can see right at the bottom here, there's kind of crescent shapes on either side of the bottom of the heart. So I'm just gonna have those kind of evenly spaced right about there. And then I am following this top flat part for the peak of the halo. So right about there looks good to me. So at this point, now that I know I wanna have it in this orientation, I am just gonna take the Sharpie and I want all the holes for the mounting wire as well as the electrical wire to be hidden. So when the customer or somebody looking at your car is looking at the headlights, everything that's holding it on is hidden. It just looks like the halo's floating in there, nice and clean. So I'm gonna go ahead and right here you can see the halo, and then up here So kind of this area here should be pretty well hidden from view. So I'm gonna mark my mounting hole right here, which is behind the halo, and then inside in the same area. And then I'm gonna do the same thing for the other side. Now I did mention if you want to reuse your painted headlights, or if you don't wanna paint your headlights, I'd show you a way to do this without marking the paint up. All we're gonna do is just take a simple piece of painter's tape and apply it where we're going to be marking with Sharpie. So we have those holes marked. The last one we're gonna need is the holes for the wires themselves. So I'm just gonna line the halo up where I want it to be. You can use a piece of tape to hold it down. So I'll do that just for fun here. All right. And then I'm gonna go on the back side of this. So I can see right here where the wires want to come back and mark kind of like a channel for that. Now, some people will cut all the way through this, so the whole thing is kind of like a hallway to put the wires through. We typically don't like to do that because if somebody does look in like this, you can see that that ring is missing. So we're gonna just cut a hole there. The other thing we're gonna have to do is just de-pin this connector, and that makes passing the wires through not only this front housing or bezel of the headlight, but also from inside the headlight outside a lot easier. So what we do for this is you could take either a toothpick or a small pick like this, and then just simply just very lightly depress the tab. And once we do that with all four, all we're gonna do is just wiggle this free. Oh, we got a sticky one. And that comes out. I'll take this grommet off, and then this goes from being a fairly large size thing to pass through to quite small once you bunch these up. So at this point we have all the holes marked. We are ready to go ahead and drill the lines for the fishing line to attach it to the bezel, as well as the electrical lines to mount it cleanly. So I'm gonna take the drill here and go ahead and do the 4 holes, 2 on each side of this front shroud. If you want to clean the burr from the hole up, if you have one, you can just take a little razor and just kind of graze it over that. Nice, nice, nice. All right, and now we're gonna go and cut the hole for the wiring to go through with the Dremel. So we are gonna start the hole, the pilot hole, if you will, with a small drill bit. Like I said, typically we'll use a Dremel, but I figured for most people at home, it'd be a lot more common to have a drill or drill bits. So I'm gonna start it with this just to show you guys how we do it, and then I am gonna go ahead and finish it with the Dremel. All right, so we have this channel, the wires pass directly through those 2 markings. So what I'm gonna do is aim directly between there and also halfway between the front and the back of the shroud. So the big thing with drilling hard plastic pieces on different planes is making sure that you're trying to come as straight as possible. When the drill starts to rotate, it is going to want to try to walk either backwards or sideways. So it's very important we try to get it as straight as possible, and then also not push too hard. We're really going to want to make sure that the drill bit's doing the work itself. So I'm going to hold the drill with this hand through here just to keep it stable and straight. And then trying to come this way, it might look a little too difficult to do, so I am gonna try to come straight down right from here. And then I do have it kind of braced on the table here, not too tight. All right, so I'm just gonna shave off the little burr that the drill bit created. Cool, so as far as the pilot hole goes, it's pretty nice and clean. Like I said, I would step it up to maybe the next like 2 sizes up, just to make sure that the wire is gonna pass cleanly through. But for what we're gonna be doing, using a Dremel to clean it up and widen it, this is perfect. So I'm gonna use the Dremel to open the hole up a little bit. Now, if you're using a normal drill bit, a round shape is just fine, but for this, I am gonna try to have it kind of like an elongated or like an oval shape. That'll just help the wires pass through easier because they are kind of also in an oval shape. So for the oval shape, I am gonna go up and down with it, not side to side, or else I may breach that back ring of this scrub. All right, so we have our widened hole right there for the wires to pass through. This all looks good to me. So like I said, we are gonna be painting this one. So at this point, I'm gonna scuff it up to make sure the paint sticks nice and solid. And then we're gonna paint it, come back tomorrow after the solvents have released, and then we're gonna install the heart halo and show you guys what it looks like all together. We are back, it is tomorrow, and these are all painted. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and install the heart halos as well as the diode C-light. If you're interested in that video, please check the link in the description to see how to install those. So at this point, we have these all set. I'm gonna go ahead and just do a little bit more prep work on these heart halos. So yesterday I showed you guys how to de-pin the connector. So it's that same, those 4 little windows. We're just gonna push the pick in there. Wiggle it a little bit, there we go. And then the other thing that you'll notice is there's gonna be a little glue holding these wires down. So these are just to make sure that with any sort of tugging that the contact patches to the actual circuit board don't pull off. But sometimes this glue is like a little bit in the way, or it kind of pushes the wires up a little further where you don't want them to be. So I wanna be able to have a little bit more slack further down. So all I'm gonna do is take a heat gun. If you don't have a heat gun, a hair dryer should work just fine. Also, if you don't feel like you need to do this, no big deal, it's just something I do. So I'm gonna hold it under there for just a moment. And now I'm just gonna pull the wires up a little bit. And now that glue is kind of loosened, it gives me a little extra slack. So I'm just gonna very carefully, we don't wanna cut all the way through the glue, because if we hit the circuit board with the blade, it may damage it, but. All right, so that's all set. Now what we're gonna do is, just like we saw yesterday, we're gonna route the wire through that opening that we created. Pull it through. And then before I put it on the housing, just to minimize any sort of contact between this and the paint, I'm just gonna start putting our fishing line in. So I'm gonna start with the outside holes for this fishing wire. And then I'm gonna go ahead and move the halo towards the position we want it. And then I'm gonna loop these around to the inside hole. So we have covered this in other videos, but the reason that we use fishing line compared to like glue or beading wire, which is another popular option, with glue, it can get messy. Obviously, if it's a liquid that turns hard, if the glue smears or gets on something you don't want it to, it's very hard to get off, especially once it cures. And then with beading wire, usually beading wire is going to be either black or silver. It's just more visible, you could see it. And then secondly, it's metal wire, it's conductive. So if it does touch any of the circuitry on the part you're installing, it could lead to failures down the road. With fishing line, it's clear, it's easy to tie, it's easy to work with, it's super cheap, and you can go fishing. All right, so once again, I'm just gonna go ahead and center this where we would like it to be. And just about there looks good to me. So here's the little tricky part, is making sure we keep tension while we tie these knots. So I'm just gonna pull this tight right there. Now, if the halo moves at all while we're tying this knot, it's okay. The other cool part about the fishing line is it does have a little bit of flex. So we can always pull the halo to where we need it to be before we tie the other knot. So I'm gonna put this on a nice microfiber cloth at this point. And this is a little bit of the insider tips or tricks. So the reason we have this wire sheathing or insulation is I actually like to use it to help with tying the knot. So typically in a very small space like that, it's gonna be a little tough, especially in a V shape, to try to cinch the knot down. So what we've done in the past is, in trying to do that, we tie it down as tight as we can, and then we go to flip it over, and we realize that the knot really isn't that tight at all. And we don't want the halo to float up or look like it's kind of off the face of it. So I'm just gonna put this over one side of the wire, not both. Let it drop into that area. So what that does is it just spaces, instead of trying to cinch it in that crevice, it kind of pushes it up a little bit more. So the other thing is, because it is kind of soft and gummy, when I tie the knot down, it almost acts as like a spring. It adds tension as I tighten it. So I'm just gonna do a triple knot just to make sure she's all set in there. And that should be good. All right, so I did just have to shift the halo a little bit. It did rotate from doing that knot. So now I do have tension on the other fishing line. So same process. I'm still pulling tension on this just so the halo doesn't loosen up and move. I'm gonna add my insulation to snug the knots, and one more. We can cut the excess fishing line off, leaving just a little bit just to make sure it stays tight. And that's that. So the one thing that we'll do next before we go ahead and put this light together is we are gonna add a little bit of JB Quick Weld. Now for that, I usually just add it right onto the knots. Maybe it's just me being a little paranoid, but I just wanna make sure that overuse with road vibration or heat, that knot doesn't loosen up and become untied so the halo's bouncing around in there. The other thing is I am gonna JB Weld this little hole where the wires go in. That's for the same reason. If this thing is like really shaking, or if somebody tugs on this, or like say like a body shop is repainting your bumper and tugs on it, we don't want the wires to pull off. You have to tug pretty hard, but we're just gonna add a little bit of JB Weld to protect it. All right, so we're gonna work a little fast because this stuff tends to cure pretty quick. So like I said, we're just gonna do both those knots just on the back side because we don't wanna get any of this on the front. If it's seen, it is gross. And then lastly, I'm just gonna do around this wire. And that should do it. So we're gonna let this sit for just a little bit for that to harden up, put the sea light in, and then we'll show you guys what this looks like when it's all lit up.